Hi folks, I hope you're well. Welcome to another little video, and as usual I'm out in the Pennines. Passed through Rochdale, climbed up out of Whitworth, and I'm just heading over the top towards Bacup. Almost level with a wind turbine, so almost at the top. Oh wow, what a place to be on a Monday evening after work. Okay, before we start this descent, which I can't film because I haven't got all my gadgets tonight, let's get into the topic of this video. Oh, bear with me. So, good friends, fellow cyclists, are you sitting down? Are you well braced? Have you got your popcorn to hand? Emergency exits understood? We're going to go there. We're actually going to go there and talk about whether or not people should wear bicycle helmets. Just a little bit of housekeeping before we get into this properly. I have no skin in the game with this topic, meaning I don't know anybody that's been seriously injured, suffered a head injury or worse through a bicycle accident. I don't know any drivers that have knocked cyclists off, so I am very conscious that if that's different, it becomes a much more emotive issue. That's not to say I don't have skin in the game with other medical and life-changing conditions. I do, but in terms of, you know, cycling helmets, wearing them, consequences of not wearing one, no, I don't have any skin in the game with this topic. I do find it fascinating though. So, you know, little evening ride, training run. I thought I'd just give it a go and talk a little bit about wearing cycling helmets. Now, I am in the UK. We are not like New Zealand, Australia, Canada. We don't mandate, we don't make it compulsory by law to wear a cycling helmet. And you'll see people in the UK that do, and you'll see people in the UK that don't. So, if I was recommending or helping somebody get into cycling and helping them sort their kit out and buy bits and pieces, for the record, I would definitely include a helmet in the list of things I'd recommend to buy. And if anybody ever asked me whether they should wear a helmet when they're out cycling, I would say yes. I mean, there's absolutely no question that if you have an impact between your head and a hard object like the road or the pavement, wearing a cycling helmet is going to significantly decrease the likelihood that you'll suffer serious injury. Flying uphill. Up to a certain speed, I suppose, beyond which, whether you're wearing a helmet or not, you're going to be impacted, for want of a better word. So there's absolutely no question in my mind, and I think anybody sensible that wearing a helmet, if you have a collision involving your head, is it is a positive, it's a benefit. And 100 people, just over 100 people I think, 2021 I think it was 111 people in the UK are killed on bicycles every year. And I haven't drilled into the statistics, so I don't know what proportion of those people died from head injuries and what proportion of those people were not wearing helmets. But those kind of statistics definitely influence the sort of debate. Well, kind of up on the top, but there's another few K to go to get up to, sweat pouring in my eye, to get up to Blackstone Edge. But I'm just going to dive in somewhere and continue our topic of conversation. Whew. Okay, so where were we? Yeah, the answer to the question, should you wear a helmet, appears to be so far, well, if it's a legal requirement, yes, it isn't really a question. And if you're getting into cycling, or you're posing the question, should I wear a helmet, the answer is probably yes, almost certainly yes. And also at the individual level, in terms of impact on your head, there's absolutely no question that wearing a helmet, is beneficial. It's a positive piece of kit to wear. And then there's a whole debate about whether wearing a helmet slightly increases the risk of neck injuries, and countries where helmets and high vis are unheard of, and the Netherlands is obviously thrown around all the time. In those countries, Netherlands, Denmark, cycling is safer, both perceived to be safer and statistically safer as well. I don't really want to get into all that. I think that's more of a sort of presentation, throwing up statistics, referencing data and metadata and all that kind of stuff. I'm out on my road bike in the middle of the Pennines and I have a memory like a sieve, so probably best I don't get into all that. But this is where I find it quite interesting, and again, just to kind of restate the point, I don't have any skin in the game here, and it's not a particularly emotive issue for me, and I know it really is for some people. So I'm looking at this, I'm talking about this in this case, in this instance, as a kind of more from an academic perspective, so just kind of because I find it quite an interesting and fascinating topic. If you zoom out to the level of kind of public health, it does become quite interesting, because there are numerous reports, and there's quite a bit of evidence, I think, that suggests mandating people wearing a bicycle helmet puts a significant amount of people off cycling and getting into cycling, which I think is interesting when you think about public health. Now, we all know the benefits of cycling. It improves your health, it improves your cardiovascular capacity, I suppose. It's a massive mood booster. It's a great way of dealing with low mood and depression. I think the jury's not out on that anymore. I think that's pretty much taken as read. And then if you consider things like, I think it's the British Heart Foundation statistics, that 160,000 people in the UK every year die from cardiovascular and circulatory complications or diseases. You then get into what I think is the fascinating nuance around this debate, which is that yes, at the individual level, wearing a helmet is beneficial to that individual having an accident, but at the public health level, there is an argument, and again, I'm not saying particularly I'm for or against this. I'm just saying that it does exist an argument to suggest that mandating people wearing helmets when they're cycling may put more people off getting into cycling and may reduce the positive impacts on overall population's public health through this particular form of exercise. So I think that is quite interesting. Sorry, I'm admiring the view here. I should be waffling about wearing cycling helmets. And I don't think this is really in question, that when you wear protective clothing you feel more protected from risk, and there is a psychological phenomenon called risk compensation where you may be inclined to slightly take more risks due to the fact that you're wearing this protective or this safety kit. And it kind of works both ways, I think. So for the cyclists themselves, there is some evidence to suggest that wearing protective kit and wearing helmets makes you inclined to take slightly more risk. And for other road users like drivers in cars, if they see a cyclist wearing a helmet, there is some evidence to suggest that they are not as inclined to mitigate the risk of, for example, passing too closely to the cyclist. And I think that's absolutely fascinating, that kind of the psychological impact of helmet wearing amongst road users. And the risk thing is really where it's at for me, I think. And I don't really know how to explain my approach to whether I wear a helmet or not without it just sounding ridiculous. A few years ago, actually quite a few years ago now, I used to do a bit of climbing, so rock climbing and winter climbing. And certainly here in the UK, and I'm sure it's not uncommon in other countries, part of the experience of climbing is this sort of walk-in stage, and it's a place where from where you're starting, whether that's kind of a hostel or a campsite or a lay-by or whatever, and you're kind of walking up to the crag or the mountain climb that you've got your eye on for that particular day, and you're carrying in your rucksack all your gear, your harness, rope, if it's winter climbing, crampons and ice axes and all that sort of jazz. And there's a point at which, on that approach to the actual bottom of the climb, the start of the climb, you gear up. Now for some people, they'll do that right at the start of the climb, so they're gearing up right at the point where they're going to take their first step almost onto the vertical route that they're taking. For some routes you'd be gearing up much sooner than that, and for other routes you might be gearing up and walking quite some distance, or kind of scrambling some distance, actually wearing your climbing harness and your rack and your climbing gear. So there's a point at which you decide, based on the risk and the environment, to start putting more safety kit on, because you ultimately you need it for what you're about to do. You don't need it when you set off, but there becomes a point that you get to a point where you're gearing up, and it's different for different people. Those people who've climbed with me will know that I tend to gear up quite early, because I wasn't ever a particularly strong or confident climber. I am a very strong and confident cyclist, and again, for me it's a sort of similar thing where you're making a rolling or a dynamic risk assessment based on the kind of cycling you're going to do, where you're going to ride, and your ability, weather conditions. There's so many variables, and I think for me there is a starting point where personally I'm comfortable not wearing a helmet, and there's a definite point where beyond which there's absolutely no doubt in my mind that I need to be wearing a helmet, I need to have a lid on. This evening's ride is an example. I've been doing big descents here in the Pennines, really fast, sweeping roads, and sections of the route in fairly heavy traffic as well. So those are variables that to me suggest it's absolutely bonkers to not put a lid on. I do sometimes just potter down the canal towpath, not going very quickly at all. It's a route I know well. I'm so far within the area of competence in terms of my cycling skills and abilities that, to me, my own personal sort of rolling dynamic risk assessment suggests that I don't need to, or I don't have to wear a helmet for that kind of ride. So again, I'm not recommending that's what you should do or people should do. It's just a little bit of context, I suppose, behind my own choices as to whether I wear a lid or not. And I think I'm guilty of the same reaction that I've sometimes been on the receiving end, where people have come up to me when I'm not wearing a helmet and said, you really ought to wear a helmet, or they've related an anecdote about a head injury, somebody they know or somebody they've heard of. I'm sort of guilty of that myself. I mean, I was driving back from the Dales a couple of weeks ago, and I saw somebody on the A65, an old guy, actually. Old guy, I'm an old guy myself, but not a young cyclist at all, just wearing a cap, busy A road, fast moving traffic, and I sort of winced when I drove past him. Not that I would ever here in the UK go up to them and shout at them to wear a helmet. It's not, as I said, it's not an emotive issue for me. It's the law that you can choose. So it was his choice not to wear a lid. But for me, there is a point where, as I'm doing that kind of risk assessment, it's clearly time to put the helmet on. Right, okay, nearly at the top of Blackstone Edge. The sun is going down. It's absolutely beautiful evening up here. Sort of long shadows. They're faded a little bit now, but just really, really nice early summer sun. And got a nice wicked descent to end the ride off Blackstone Edge. Definitely wearing a helmet for that one. Anyway, I hope you've I hope you've got something out of this video. It's a little bit of a different one for me, not a lot of camera faff, just waffling into the little GoPro that I've got. I find this topic really fascinating. I do know it's an emotive topic and it gets people a little bit shouty. I'm not looking for any of that. I'm happy to hear people's views, but please don't get shouty or abusive in the comments. If you'd be so kind. We're all cyclists, we all rub along, we all should be rubbing along nicely, and we should all be looking out for each other, and through the benefit of our own experience, advice if it's asked for, perhaps, we can help each other along and promote this fantastic sport that we all love. Sport, pastime, exercise, whatever. Fill in the word and fill in the world with cyclists, obviously. Okay, stay safe, take care, and happy cycling. Bye.